I read an article today in Forbes.com's website that specifically had to do with the Corporate Transparency Act. An attorney, I guess an estate attorney, decided that he was going to give some very simple, straightforward advice on what us business owners and smaller investors should do as far as compliance with the Corporate Transparency Act. I'll just give you some of the highlights of his advice. He says that in his opinion, the advice is pretty straightforward. Each owner just needs to fill out the paperwork. Maybe not even worry about hiring somebody like an attorney or a CPA or a consultant to do it. Because honestly, when in doubt, report anybody, right? That's the biggest thing. Use your common sense. Because ultimately, the professionals are going to say, well, we're not sure. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't for a lot of people. So his advice was, when in doubt, report everybody. You might as well, right? Because there's no penalties for reporting someone who's not really a beneficial owner. So what's the big deal? And if you're worried about updating these beneficial owner information, and you have to worry about if they move or if they change their name or anything that happens that would require updating the database with FinCEN, just have them get a FinCEN number and it takes care of itself. And if you have a trust, just report everything with the trust. Report all the beneficiaries. Just report everybody. It's just like Oprah Winfrey back in the day when she surprised her audience when she said, "You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Everybody gets a car," right? Well, in this scenario, you're a beneficial owner. You're a beneficial owner. You're a beneficial owner. Besides that, give me all your information, right? So, and I love this advice was, if you're having problems getting these beneficial owners to give you their full legal name, their social security number, their date of birth, their physical address, a copy of their driver's license or their passport, just pay them, right? Just pay them money. It's no big deal. And if you're worried about, ID expiring or whatever, just make sure you get all their expiration dates and put on your calendar with an alarm so that way you can reach out to them at the proper time. Okay. I I don't know whether to laugh or just recoil in horror after reading that article because, oh my gosh, right? Well, I'm going to get into in this video, I'm going to talk to you about why I think this advice is moronic, and I'll tell you about that there is an exemption. You can avoid all of this corporate transparency reporting crap, in my opinion. But before I do that, I need to give you a disclaimer that states that I am not a licensed real estate, or excuse me, not real estate, legal, accounting, or tax professional. None of what I say here in this video should be considered legal, tax, or accounting advice. And before you enter into any financial transactions, you should consult with a licensed professional. Okay? Now, who am I? My name is Don Thornton. I have had my own real estate investing company for 21 years. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Even at my when I left high school, I started my own business. So I've been an investor or a small business owner my entire life. The last 21 years I've spent in real estate investing. I have an MBA in finance. And while you should pay attention to me, if not only for that, is that while I'm not an attorney and I do not play one on TV, I do work directly with a law firm out of Texas that does work with people who are looking for an exemption and not being drawn into the whole Corporate Transparency Act. So having done that, let's get into the meat of this video. So the problem with attorneys and other professionals like CPAs, accounting, financial consultants, and so on and so forth is that they're part of the swamp, in my opinion. And I don't mean the swamp in a Make America Great context, whether you're for or against it or whatever. I'm talking about the bureaucracy that exists around this law that is they're circling the wagons and everything is being pointed to convince you to comply. Case in point, I give this a challenge to you right now. Go on the internet and show me one article from a professional, licensed professional, attorney, so on and so forth, that's teaching you how to exempt yourself not to comply, right? You're not going to find one, or maybe you'll find one or two, but the vast majority of them are saying, it's no big deal. Everybody's doing it. We just want you to comply. No big deal, right? Well, remember, attorneys are officially officers of the court. They want you in the system. All these professionals, their agenda is to get you into the Corporate Transparency Act syndicate because there's going to be a lot of money made by them. They're going to help you comply. They're going to defend you. Well, if you have the money to defend them, if your assets are frozen, that's a whole different story. But here's the thing, especially accountants. Accountants are going to want to make extra money with you on all this other compliance. And be careful. They will rat you out if they see any unusual transactions or anything that would lead them to believe that it was worth submitting a suspicious activity report. So be careful about that, okay? Just remember, they're part of the agenda. And in their opinion, this is very clear, they're not going to tell you anything about exemptions besides the ones that FinCEN talks about, which is, you make 5 million or more a year, gross receipts, you have more than 20 full-time US based employees. If you work for an exempt company like a bank, financial institution, government, accounting, insurance, so on and so forth. Okay, so as far as they're concerned, you're in the system, there are no exemptions. So understand that their agenda is to have you comply with the Corporate Transparency Act. Their agenda should not be your agenda. Remember that. And this is one of the things that I tend to shake my head at, is because people have this rather naive idea that by you going to an attorney or going to a professional, that they're going to be there and they have a fiduciary responsibility to help you. Not in this case or not. They're going to show you, they're going to talk about their agenda, not your agenda. So keep that in mind, okay? So let's move on to the next point, where the author of this article was saying that the default philosophy you should have with this is to just simply register everybody. But there's an issue with that. Now I'm borrowing here from the FinCEN Small Entity Compliance Guide, because if you read that PDF, they state very clearly that reporting companies are required to identify all individuals who exercise substantial control or substantial influence over the company. There's no limit to the number of individuals who can be reported for exercising substantial control or influence. So the attorney's advice is, when in doubt, report everyone, right? But remember, everything is so vague in this law. And you have to be thinking from CYA point of view, because if something comes up, it's going to be the behemoth federal government against you, right? So in FinCEN's opinion, this law's opinion, the nature and scope, if anybody has influence on the nature, scope, or attributes of your business, the selection and termination of business lines or ventures, or even the business focus, contracts, sales, mortgages, budget, any kind of compensation, okay? And even it's down to the absurd. If you're registering a company after January 1st, 2024, even the person who registers, who files the registration paperwork, and that person's supervisor, they are also considered beneficial owners of your company, okay? Now, if you take that definition I just went over about all these things in this very vague subjective term of anybody who exercises significant control or significant influence, that could be anybody. That could be a coach. That could be your business coach. It could be a mentor. It could be family members. It could be anybody in a mastermind group. You see, what worries me is that vagueness and subjectivity here. And what also worries me is if you dive into that PDF that FinCEN put out, it says right there, they expect more beneficial owners than maybe you think about, okay? Because I'm quoting from here. FinCEN expects that every reporting company will be substantially controlled by one or more individuals, and therefore every reporting company will be able to identify at least one beneficial owner to FinCEN. All right, so they're coming out and telling you that in their opinion, There's more than just that. If they didn't think that, why would they go to all this trouble to put out an 80 plus page manual describing who can be a beneficial owner? Because they expect that. And if you don't provide that to them, in my humble opinion, that is going to be a huge red flag and will likely mean that they're going to take another look at you. So keep that in mind as you're going over this. Now, the another problem with this article that talks about when in doubt, report everybody, is it completely eases over the idea of, well, you got to get their cooperation, right? And remember, when you put someone down as a beneficial owner of your company, and they may not think they are, but according to the guidelines, you think they are, right? So you're going to have to go to that person and say, "Listen, hey, I think you may be considered a beneficial owner of my company. So please, will you give me your full name, your social security number, your date of birth, your residential address, your ID number, and copies of your passport or your driver's license, please?" Or you know what? It's okay. Don't worry about that. Just go to FinCEN and give all that information to them and get a FinCEN number. No big deal, right? No harm, no foul. Like, again, it's going to be that easy to do, right? So what this person doesn't really, this attorney in this article doesn't really talk about is like, well, what if they say no, right? I mean, his idea was, oh, just pay them money. They don't want to do it, just pay them some money. Well, for a lot of people, their privacy is a heck of a lot more important and than whatever money you're going to give them. And they know they're going to have some leverage there. They could really say, okay, yeah, give me $10,000, I'll do it. I mean, you don't know, right? So that's going to leave you with a Sophie's choice. You know what that means? It's a good movie. You got to choose between your husband dying or your kid dying. Okay, Sophie's choice. Are you going to leave people off that you think, according to the guidelines of FinCEN, they could potentially be considered a beneficial owner? If they say no, you're going to leave them out, or what are you going to do? Right? Here's the thing: question you're going to have to ask is if there's any issues in the future you have with FinCEN, they will try to justify that to make sure if they've frozen your accounts or they've seized your assets, they'll hang something like that on you to justify not returning them. Those are the stakes that we're talking about here with the Corporate Transparency Act. And in my opinion, the professionals are not adequately warning you of these worst case scenarios because worst case scenarios tend to happen more than we would expect, right? So we have insurance. We have insurance for the worst case scenario. Well, there's no insurance with the insurance and there's no insurance with the Corporate Transparency Act unless you exempt yourself and remove yourself away from it completely. Okay. So next point that he makes in his article was about, just updating the changes. And again, I think that he glosses over how difficult of a task that's going to be. In my opinion, I think this is one of the most underestimated aspects and dangers of the Corporate Transparency Act is how are you going to track the changes that happen in people's lives, okay? People change, relationships change, people disappear. By when you put them in as a beneficial owner of your company, effectively, you're tied to the hip with these people, okay? And if it's just ludicrous when in this article he writes that, oh, just put a alarm on your phone when there's stuff, you look at their ID and then when they when their license is supposed to expire, then just you can reach out and call. How do you know where they're going to be? These licenses are good for 10 years. Passports, or at least 5 years, right? They're good for years. How are you going to find them then? You're going to have to make sure that you have them, have a skip trace company, private detective on file to go find them if you can't, if they move and they leave your life or whatever. I mean, again, it sounds absurd, but it's going to be an issue. So you're at their mercy. You know, you're not going to know if they move. You're not going to know if a woman gets married and changes her last name. You're not going to know that. You have to rely upon them to tell you that. And here's the danger that is not being significantly warned about and emphasized with most of this article and most other ones you see out there is you will be civilly or criminally responsible if they do not update their information to you and you don't get that out to FinCEN within 30 days of the change in their status. Okay, and that leads us to the next problem I have with this article, which is the problem of reporting mistakes. All right. So before I get into this, remember, I'm looking at this as a Murphy's Law situation, where if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. I've been doing business for a long time. I'll be 16 next month. And, in my experience, things do go wrong more often than you think. And you have to be prepared and you have to think about this. Okay. So let's talk about the upgrade. I mean, it's going to be the updating we just touched on. So let's say that somebody gets married and doesn't tell you they changed their name. It's either they did the hyphen or they change their name to the husband's name. I'm being a little bit sexist here, but that's how that mostly happens, even today in today's society. So remember, on the 31st day of the change in their status, if you've not reported that to FinCEN, then you are in violation. It is not beyond the pale to think that it could be 6 months or more before you're notified about that. And from day 31 until, let's say, day 180, you or more, then that is, you are not in compliance. And there are $500 retroactive fines for non-compliance. And that's if you're lucky and they consider that to be non-willful compliance. What happens if they think that, okay, that is, you were willfully non-compliant? Okay, so best case scenario here, that'd be $500 a day times 180 days. That's $90,000 you could potentially pay, right? Again, Murphy's Law, but it's there. That's the risk, right? And if they make the case that you were willfully non-compliant, well, that's criminal. And they can imprison you for 2 years per violation for willful non-compliance. And before you're coming to me and telling me, Don, that's not going to happen, may I please remind you that FinCEN's sole purpose is to combat money laundering and financial crimes. And they can and do use money laundering statutes, which are the most draconian on the federal books. They can freeze your bank accounts. They can seize your assets at the drop of the hat. And this is the question I always ask people in this type of a situation. You're guilty until you prove your innocence. How can you prove your innocence if you are broke and you don't have access to your money? Trust me, I have a lot of people that have been reaching out to me about this the last 3 or 4 months, and there's more people than you know that are already in that position and they can't do anything about it because they don't have the money to fight it. Okay. So the last point I want to make here before we get into this, before we in this video is, why aren't these professionals? Why are the CPAs, the attorneys, the estate planners, why are they not talking about exemption? They're only talking to you about compliance. And in my experience, these professionals fall into 2 categories. They either don't know about the exemption, which shame on them, right? Or they do know about it and they don't care. Their agenda is to get you into the system, right? Guys, it's a rigged system here. They're only going to go, they're not even going over the exemptions. That's my issue with them. We know they're going to tell you about the FinCEN exemptions, right? They're going to tell you about the banks, the insurance companies, the financial institutions, people that make more than $5 million and employ more than 20 US-based employees. That's fine. But, and those people are exempt and they have their advocates, they have their money. The ones they're targeting, those of us who don't make $5 million, don't have 20 US-based employees, right? We have an LLC, we have a corporation. We don't have the advocates. Where are the advocates? Okay. I want to be your advocate. The attorneys I work with want to be your advocates. And so my question to you as we wrap this up is, do you really want to jump through all of those hoops and risk all that stuff that you don't have to? We have the exemption and we can help you exempt yourself and your business, but you have to take action. And the call to action I'm making to you right now is, I need you to go down below in the description of the video. You'll see a link. Go to that link, click on it, and we can talk about this, and we can set up a time, get you some more information, and we can talk about how we can exempt you, and so you can remove yourself completely from this insanity. And I'm telling you that you're underestimating what's going to be happening. It's going to start hitting next year, 2025, once everybody registers. So remember that. But I want to thank you for your attention. I'll see you next.